This video discusses the signals that Germany and China are sending that they are getting very serious about starting the Third World War any day. Hello friends, this is Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini, where I provide unique analysis of world events based on the unmasked truth that after surrender, Germany continued World War II clandestinely and became a killing machine. I also provide true news that you will find nowhere else. Germany and China are sending multiple signals that they are ready to start the Third World War any day. Some may be turned off by my bringing prophecy into the discussion, but it is the most critical factor in when the war will start. That is not an overstatement. The Germans pay heed to prophecy and have their own prophets who understand prophecy very well, having learnt it from Mr. Herbert W. Armstrong, through whom God founded the modern era of His church. In addition, they watch what I write on Bible prophecy like hawks, evaluate it, apply their own understanding of it, and share it among the German masquerader national leadership in the United States, who share it with German national and military leadership and planners. I will show in my brief review of prophecy that time constraints God had imposed in first getting His warning message out to the world are now over. That's why this is an urgent message. I've already detailed these constraints in my recent videos in World War Watch. First, let's discuss the signals Germany and China are sending about the start of the war. Then I'll summarize prophecies concerning the start of the war. You will see how the Germans make them mesh together. They pay heed to prophecy because they want to use it to their advantage in conquering the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. So first, the signals. First, the Nazi Zelensky, president of Ukraine, has been stating for months that Ukraine is getting ready to launch a counteroffensive against Russian-held Ukrainian territories to wrest Ukrainian lands back from Russia. A few days ago, Zelensky stated that Ukraine is ready to launch its counteroffensive, but that Ukraine will not make an announcement of when it is launched for obvious reasons. The BBC, ABC, and other media outlets reported on June 5, 2023, that Ukrainian forces are shifting to offensive action in some areas with a series of small-scale armored offensive operations, though the country's Deputy Defense Minister Hanna Maliar did not say whether this was the start of the long-awaited counteroffensive. On the same day, the Nova Kakhovka Dam on the Dnieper River in southern Ukraine was breached. Ukraine blames Russia for the attack, though Russia denies it and blames Ukraine instead. Ukrainian military forces occupy the west side of the river, whereas the Russian forces occupy the east side. The flooding caused by the breach is likely to cause an economic and humanitarian disaster due to tens of thousands ultimately being affected, loss of drinking water for the Ukrainian population living in the area, and agricultural crops losses. France 24 reported that both Belgorod region and the town of Shebekino, which are adjacent to Ukraine's Kharkiv region, have come under repeated fire in recent weeks from the Ukrainian side of the border. It reported on June 2, 2023, that 4 people died in shelling in the Russian region of Belgorod. I would expect the war to start slowly, with the forces operating on the Ukrainian side probing first. In my opinion, the war has effectively been launched, though Ukraine denies it has launched its counteroffensive. However, Russia thinks the counteroffensive has started. It should be quite clear to everyone that the forces operating on the Ukrainian side are led by Germans, with German officers and soldiers operating there. This is a war between Germany and Russia, with Germany using Ukrainian soldiers as fodder for this war. Now, China is throwing challenges at the United States in the Taiwan Straits and South China Sea in a much more aggressive manner than ever before. Late last month, a Chinese J-15 fighter jet performed an unnecessary aggressive maneuver while intercepting a U.S. Air Force reconnaissance aircraft over the South China Sea. The Chinese jet flew directly in front of the American plane's nose. Then on June 3, 2023, as a U.S. guided missile destroyer and a Canadian frigate were transiting the Taiwan Strait between Taiwan and mainland China, they were intercepted by a Chinese warship. According to the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, the Chinese vessel overtook the American ship and then veered across its bow at a distance of 150 yards in an unsafe manner. A video of the maneuver has been widely circulated. In reaction to the Chinese provocation, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told the Shangri-La Dialogue Forum in Singapore on the same day that the U.S. would not flinch in the face of bullying or coercion from China and would continue to regularly sail through and fly over the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea to emphasize that their international waters to counter Beijing's sweeping territorial claims in the South China Sea. Next day at the same forum, China's Defense Minister General Li Shangfu retorted that China doesn't have any problems with innocent passage, but that we must prevent attempts that try to use those freedom of navigation patrols, that innocent passage, to exercise hegemony of navigation, and that such so-called freedom of navigation patrols are a provocation to China. China considers Taiwan to be wholly Chinese territory. General Lee refused General Austin's invitation to have discussions on the sidelines of the conference in Singapore. Since 2021, China has declined or failed to respond to many requests from the U.S. Defense Department to hold discussions with senior leaders, as well as refusing to hold working-level engagements. Thus, China seems to be indicating that it wants war with the United States. Under such circumstances, an incident such as firing at a U.S., Canadian, British, or Australian ship or aircraft could ignite a broader war very quickly. Then the third signal: is China preparing for war with India? WION, which is World One News, an Indian multinational English language news channel headquartered in New Delhi, recently asked the question, is China preparing for war with India? In one of its YouTube pieces, stating that over the past 3 years, China has built military facilities near the border with India called the Line of Actual Control, such as new airfields, helipads, railway facilities, roads, bridges, and missile bases. At the airport, China has built hardened shelters that can accommodate 16 fighter aircraft and hide their presence. What could China's goals be in a war with India while at the same time preparing for a war with the United States? China also has its eyes on Russia to capture some Russian territory and Russian energy assets to assure a guaranteed cheap energy supply in case of war. If Russia's war with Germany, which is in the beginning stages in Ukraine, does not go well for Russia, China will likely jump in the fray. In fact, China may already have agreed with Germany to jump into the war with Russia as Germany's ally as soon as the war, now in its nascent stages, escalates into a broader conflict. China's goal in India appears to be to encourage the Taliban, consisting mainly of Pashtuns, the Taliban in Pakistan and Afghanistan, to launch an attack on North India and Kashmir and Punjab states to destroy the Sikhs and Punjabis. China could start a low-level fighting war with India on the Line of Actual Control to pin down the Indian military with Narendra Modi's government, which is a Germany and China ally, sending in bulk of the Sikh and Punjabi soldiers to the conflict with China, so that Kashmir and Punjab are left relatively undefended for the Taliban to romp into India and commit genocide on the Sikhs and Punjabis. That strategy was used by the Parsi general Sam Manekshaw in the 1971 Bangladesh Liberation War in an attempt to allow Pakistan and Kashmir to be overrun by the Pakistani army to commit genocide on the Sikhs and Punjabis. But Pakistani Field Commander Brigadier General Pervez Musharraf, later President of Pakistan, at that time did not give permission to his Pakistani forces to advance into India and commit genocide. General Manik Shah had deliberately left the Punjab and Kashmir border lightly defended so that the Pakistani army could simply walk in. China inclusion with India is trying to implement the same strategy. Now, the Pashtuns, known as Pathans in Punjab provinces of both India and Pakistan, live in India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. They have been German allies since the end of World War II. Most of the Taliban leaders in Afghanistan are Pashtuns. Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan is a Pashtun. The current Prime Minister of Pakistan, Shehbaz Sharif, is a Pashtun masquerading as a Pakistani Punjabi. Nawaz Sharif, the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, elder brother of Shehbaz Sharif, served the longest tenure of 9 years of any Pakistani politician in the office of Prime Minister. They have ruled Pakistan for the past decade, except for 303 days of Shahid Khaqan Abbasi as Prime Minister. Imran Khan agitating after being deposed as Prime Minister is for mere show. He knows that another Pathan like him is in charge of the government. This situation means that Pashtuns control the government both in Afghanistan and Pakistan. There are also many Pashtuns or Pathans masquerading around as Punjabi Hindus and Sikhs and will fully support the Pashtun armies of Afghanistan and Pakistan in their attack on Punjab and Kashmir and India. China has installed nuclear weapons in Afghanistan. Pakistan is already a nuclear power. The German-Chinese plan seems to be to keep the Indian military occupied in a low-level conflict in the line of actual control, leaving the Pashtun frees to attack without much military opposition in an attempt to destroy the Punjabis and Sikhs. They also know that Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and most of India is a German ally. Now, ABC News reported that on June 2, 2023, ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, which handle nearly 40% of the U.S. cargo imports from Asia, were shut down amid labor negotiations between the shippers industry group, the Pacific Maritime Association or the PMA, and the longshoremen trade union known as the International Longshore and Warehouse Union or the ILW. The union also staged similar work actions that shut down or severely impacted terminal actions at the ports of Oakland, Tacoma, Seattle, and Hunemi. What does a labor dispute between dock workers on the U.S. West Coast and shippers has to do about China and Germany's preparation of war with the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel? The answer is that it will most likely play an important role in the prophesied economic siege of our countries by Germany and China. The reason is that the Union is controlled by German masqueraders. Now, on June 5, 2023, the US Navy and the UK Royal Navy went to the aid of a merchant ship in the narrow Strait of Hormuz when 3 fast attack vessels of Iran's Revolutionary Guard harassed it. The situation de-escalated an hour later when the guard vessels departed from the merchant ship. Iran is allied with China. China tried to use Iran to start a war with the United States in 2020, but that attempt ended summarily by the US assassinating General Soleimani of Iran. However, Iran remains committed to going to war with the United States in alliance with China, because of the sanctions imposed on it by the United States. Thus, it seems Germany and China have put all the elements in place and are fully prepared to start the Third World War any day. Now let's review the prophecies to see why there are no constraints from prophecy point of view for the war to start any day. God stated through Amos the prophet in Amos 3 verse 7, "Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he reveals his secret unto his servants the prophets." So God's purpose in revealing secrets of his prophecies to the prophets is to warn the world of coming wars and catastrophes so that nations and individuals can correct their conduct and cannot claim that God did not warn them. Briefly, this is where we stand in terms of sequence of prophesied end time events. We know from the most up-to-date calculations by Bible scholars with which God's church agrees that the world crossed the 6,000-year mark since Adam and Eve's creation around September 19, 2020. God has allotted 6,000 years for man to rule himself. Then God will usher in his 1,000-year rule. Since 6,000 years of man's rule are over, the fulfillment of end-time events can begin any time. Other prophecies that indicate that end-time events can begin at any time is the last hour prophecy in 1 John chapter 2 verse 18, which states, "Little children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now are there many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last hour." In prophecy, 1 day equals 1,000 years. Therefore, 1 hour would equal approximately 1,000 divided by 24, or 41 years and 8 months. Masquerader prophet Gerald R. Flurry and I agree that this period is to be counted from the time Mr. Armstrong died on January 16, 1986. Therefore, 30 years and 2 months from that date brings us to the beginning of 2024, when the 3.5-year long Great Tribulation for the American, British, and Jewish people could begin. Again, only God knows the actual dates these events could begin. I am not setting any dates. This is just an indication that end-time events can begin any time, and the first end-time event is the Third World War, pictured by the first 4 seals of Revelation 6. Another prophecy that indicates we are at the very door of start of the end time events is the prophecy in Revelation 10 verses 5 to 6 and verse 11, which state, "And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hand to heaven, and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things that are in it, the earth and the things that are in it, and the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be delay no longer." And then verse 11, "And he said to me, You must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, tongues," meaning many languages, "and kings." Verse 6 shows that we have reached a time when there is no longer any delay in fulfillment of end-time events. This happened after 19 years of combined preaching by Jules Derwes Jr., Gerald R. Flurry, head of the Philadelphia Church of God, and David C. Pack, head of the Restored Church of God, for God's church to get back on track beginning soon after Mr. Armstrong's death on January 16, 1986, when his successor Joseph W. Koch Sr. led the church astray by discarding all the doctrines and truths God had restored through Mr. Armstrong. After that, around January 2005, the world reached the time of no longer any delay in fulfillment of end-time events. However, verse 11 that followed in sequence prophesied that someone would prophesy again in many languages. I believe beginning in early 2005, I was commissioned to prophesy again when many ministers in God's church indicated to me that I should start preaching. I started it in September 2006 with a blog, and in December 2006 by delivering weekly messages that are then delivered to every human being on earth by God's angels in his or her own language. In early 2024, I will complete 19 years since I was commissioned to start preaching. God often does his work in 19-year time cycles. This indicates I will have completed my work by early 2024, indicating that end time events can begin any time. The first time end time event again is the Third World War, pictured by the first four seals of Revelation 6. That will be followed by the fifth seal, which is the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation for the American, British, and Jewish people. All these three prophecies tell us that from God's point of view, the warning he wanted to be preached to the world will be completed by January 2024. Sequence of end time events indicates that though the warning to the world will be completed by January-March 2024, end time events, meaning the catastrophic Third World War, can begin literally any day now. I reiterate, I do not set any dates. The reason is that the Germans and Chinese are free moral agents. God has given them the freedom to start the war anytime. He will not force them to do it at a specific hour of a specific day. But there are now no time constraints left from his point of view, as the warning message to be preached for a specific number of years is already nearing completion. Then here is the prophesied sequence of end time events. First, God's warning message has to be preached for 30 years or two time cycles of 19 years each. That will be complete by January 2024. After that comes the 3.5 years of the Great Tribulation for the British, American, and Jewish people. But before the Great Tribulation can begin, the British, American, and Jewish people must be defeated in a 30-day war by a German-led alliance. Before the 30-day war can begin, the USA, British, Commonwealth nations, and Israel must be economically besieged for an unspecified period of time. This then is how all these prophecies could play out if full-scale Third World War could begin, say in 20 to 40 days. So within 20 to 40 days, through some incident, China triggers a war with the United States, such as firing at a US, Canadian, British, or Australian warship in the South China Sea or Taiwan Strait, or any similar provocative incident. Then Germany attacks Russia through its Ukraine proxy, using its own troops, broadening Ukraine's counteroffensive. Then start of the war between Germany and Russia and between China and the US is the signal for German masqueraders to start a full-blown deadly civil war in the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and by the Palestinians in Israel, which could last for some months. Then Germany and China begin an economic siege of the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel as soon as they start the war. They shut down international shipping with their navies. China stops supplying goods to these nations. That means America, British Commonwealth nations. Longshoremen's unions stop unloading and loading goods at the ports, because most of the longshoremen or the dock workers are German masqueraders. Then Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz. A full-blown economic siege is implemented within days and weeks. This economic siege will last during the Civil War in the United States, British Commonwealth nations, and Israel. Then China initiates a low-intensity war with India on the line of actual control as it initiates the war with the United States in 20 to 40 days from today by movement of troops and small arms fire. India's Narendra Modi, a German ally, sends more troops to the line of actual control, including most of Sikhs and Punjabis in India's military. That is the signal for the Taliban or Pashtuns in Afghanistan and Pakistan to attack North India and Kashmir and Punjab states. Since second Punjabi troops have been sent to the border with China, there are only hostile Indian troops from states allied with Indian states allied with Germany and China to defend Punjab and Kashmir. They will not do so, allowing the Pashtuns free rein to commit genocide on the Sikhs and Punjabis. Then, when Americans, British, and the Jews in Israel have massacred each other in the tens of millions or even hundreds of millions in their respective civil wars, and famine and disease are running rampant with the breakdown of supply chains and medical facilities, German-led alliance will then attack them on their own soil and defeat them in the 30-day war, which will be followed by the Great Tribulation. Till then, they were concentrating on enforcing the economic siege on the oceans. That will bring us to March 2024. So my task of preaching the warning message for 19 years will also be completed by January 2024. Now, by painting this scenario, I am merely saying that for the Great Tribulation to begin soon after 38 total years of preaching by January 2024, all these events must take place prior to that. That's why the Third World War could begin any day of choosing by Germany and China from now on. Please understand that I have received no special message from God delivered by an angel that this is exactly how these events will take place. The only message I have received concerning sequence of end time events is that Revelation 8 verses 6 to 12 is discussing the subduing of the king of the south by the king of the north, mentioned in Daniel 11 verses 40 to 44, which takes place during the Great Tribulation, not before it. Germany tried to fulfill that prophecy already by Germany attacking Iran's supposed king of the south, but without success. When I guessed that this is what they were trying to do, I only laughed because of the message God had delivered through his angel to me. I never set specific dates. I have also stated many times that God has given us the milestones in the messages of the seven seals of the book of Revelation. How the world moves from one milestone to the next may not take place exactly as we surmise and on the exact dates. We see prophecy darkly as if through a glass, as stated in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 verses 8 to 12. But the milestones are guaranteed. Now, because the broader Third World War can begin any day, I would take this warning very seriously and set your spiritual house in order. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please continue to watch my videos on important world events, World War III watch, politics, international business, how Bible prophecy is playing an important role in world affairs, advice on health and medical problems, and much more for in-depth and insightful analysis. Please also subscribe to my YouTube and Facebook channels Unmasked Truth with Harmanjit Saini to view and get information on the latest videos.